Life had been quiet for David Miller. At 30, his days felt empty, a bit like his living room on a rainy afternoon. He often sat by the window, watching the world outside, feeling a deep sense of loneliness. His work as an architect was precise, but his creative spirit felt lost. He longed for something to spark joy, something to fill the quiet spaces in his life. One Saturday, David decided to tackle his dusty attic. He hoped to find some old blueprints, but mostly found forgotten memories. Under a thick, faded sheet, tucked away in a dark corner, he felt a solid wooden object. He pulled the sheet away, revealing an old, scuffed wooden box with a brass latch. It was his grandfather's modeling kit, untouched for years. David carefully unlatched the box. Inside, nestled in velvet, were small knives, tiny tweezers, delicate brushes, and pots of dried paint. Each tool felt familiar, a connection to his past. As he touched them, an idea began to form in his mind, growing clearer by the second. A genuine smile, the first in a long time, spread across his face. The next morning, David was already at work. He cleared a large table in the attic, setting up a dedicated workspace. With newfound energy, he began cutting and assembling pieces of wood, forming the sturdy base for his ambitious project. He planned to recreate his entire hometown in miniature, a detailed tribute to the place he grew up. David soon realized that precision required more than just tools. He needed historical accuracy for his miniature town. Therefore, he decided to visit the local town library, a place he hadn't been to in years. He spent hours poring over old maps, faded photographs, and local history books, trying to get every detail just right. While David was engrossed in his research, a woman with wavy auburn hair approached his table. It was Susan Clark, the librarian. She had noticed his deep interest in the town's history. With a warm, friendly smile, she offered her help, asking about his project. Her voice was gentle, full of curiosity. David, a bit shy, hesitantly accepted her offer. Susan's enthusiasm was infectious, gently encouraging him to share more. She led him to a special archive, explaining that she had a collection of rare historical photos of the town not usually available to the public. These photos showed incredible details that David had been searching for. After several library visits, David felt comfortable enough to invite Susan to his attic. He wanted her to see the project she had helped so much with. When Susan stepped into the attic and saw the large, intricate base of the model, her eyes widened. She was visibly impressed by its scale and David's ambition. Her excitement was clear. That afternoon marked their first time working together on the model. Susan, with her historical knowledge, provided context for each building and street. Meanwhile, David, using his grandfather's tools, carefully cut a tiny piece of wood for a building's frame. Their collaboration was seamless, a quiet dance of shared purpose and focus. They decided to build the library first, a nod to where they met. It was a brick building with large arched windows and a green door. Getting the tiny windows perfect was a real challenge. They found themselves laughing often, sharing jokes as they struggled with the minuscule details. The attic, once a place of solitude for David, now echoed with shared joy. Over the next few weeks, the attic became our second home. Susan and I spent countless hours there, our hands busy with tiny tools and paints. We built houses, shops, and even a tiny clock tower. With every new building, our conversations grew longer and our laughter echoed more freely. Our friendship was building, just like the town. One afternoon, as Susan meticulously painted the miniature park benches a deep forest green, she paused. "This reminds me of the park near my grandmother's house," she said softly, a nostalgic smile on her face. We used to have picnics there every summer. My grandpa would always hide a small treat for me under a specific bench. Her eyes sparkled with the memory. I listened, captivated by her story. Her words painted a clear picture. Then I found myself sharing a memory too. My dad used to take me to the old train station every Sunday, I explained. We'd watch the trains come and go, imagining where they were headed. In those quiet moments, we learned more about each other's pasts, building a deeper connection. After weeks of careful work, the miniature library was finally complete. It was a perfect replica, with its brick facade, arched windows, and tiny green door. We both felt a sense of pride as we carefully lifted it. With a shared glance, we placed it gently in the very center of the model town. It stood there, a tiny, beautiful symbol of where our own story had begun. One afternoon, a small disagreement arose. We were discussing the color of the old post office in the model. It was definitely a faded yellow, I insisted, remembering old photographs. Susan, however, was sure it had a soft, pale orange hue. The tension was brief, but noticeable, a slight crease forming between her brows as we debated. Neither of us wanted to give in, so we decided to settle it. The town library has old archives, doesn't it? Susan suggested. We can check for an old color photograph of the post office there. We packed up our tools and walked to the real library together. The silence between us was a little awkward, still thick with the unresolved debate. Inside the library, we found a dusty old town history book. Flipping through it, we found a color photograph of the post office from the 1950s. It was a faded, creamy yellow, but with a definite hint of orange in the sunlight. We looked at each other, then burst out laughing. We had both been a little bit right. We apologized, our bond feeling even stronger. To ensure we got every detail of the main street correct, we decided to take a walk through the real town. We strolled along, pointing out architectural details, noting the textures of brick and wood. Susan sketched small details in her notebook while I took mental notes of the proportions. It was a relaxed and enjoyable way to gather information. As we walked, our conversation naturally moved beyond the model. We talked about our lives, our work, and our personal aspirations. Susan shared her dream of organizing a community reading program, while I spoke about my desire to design sustainable buildings. We found common ground, discovering shared values and dreams. The walk felt less like research and more like a journey into our futures. We eventually stopped at a small, cozy coffee shop on the corner. With warm mugs in our hands, we sat in comfortable silence for a while. The afternoon sun streamed through the window, warming our faces. There was no need for words. The air was filled with unspoken feelings and a growing affection. It was a peaceful, perfect moment. David had been meeting his old friend, Michael, for lunch. They sat in a small cafe, sunlight streaming through the window. Michael looked at him closely over his coffee cup. "You seem different lately, David," Michael said with a thoughtful smile. "Happier, more open somehow. It's a good change." David felt a warmth spread through him as Michael spoke. He realized his friend was absolutely right. Since Susan had entered his life, things had shifted. Her curiosity and gentle encouragement had slowly pulled him out of his shell. He found himself smiling more, talking more, and feeling truly content. She was a wonderful influence. Back in the attic a few evenings later, the model had truly come alive. It was incredibly detailed, with tiny lamp posts, miniature flower boxes, and even little figures on the streets. David and Susan worked late, the only sound the soft hum of the attic fan and their quiet murmurs. A single lamp cast a cozy, focused light over their workspace. Susan reached for a tiny, fine-tipped brush from grandfather's modeling kit. At the exact same moment, David's hand moved for it too. Their fingers brushed, a light, unexpected contact. It was a small touch, but an electric current seemed to pass between them. They both froze, their hands still hovering over the kit. Slowly, they lifted their gazes, their eyes meeting across the miniature town. The air in the attic suddenly felt thick with unspoken words. Susan's green eyes held a soft, questioning look. For a long moment, David felt an undeniable pull. It seemed he would lean in, bridging the small distance between them for a kiss. But David hesitated. A sudden wave of fear washed over him. What if he ruined everything? Their friendship was so perfect, so easy. He pulled back, just a fraction, breaking the spell. The moment, charged with possibility, was suddenly lost. A quiet disappointment settled in the room. Susan's eyes flickered away, a hint of hurt in their green depths. She cleared her throat, the small sound loud in the sudden silence. "It's getting late, David," she said, her voice a little softer than usual. "Perhaps we should call it a night." The easy, comfortable atmosphere that had filled the attic for months was suddenly strained and awkward. A few days later, the awkwardness still lingered. Susan was at the library, tidying a shelf, when a colorful flyer caught her eye. It announced the annual Town Founders' Day Fair, a beloved local event. Reading about the community exhibits, an exciting idea sparked in her mind. Her eyes widened with inspiration. The next time they met in the attic, Susan couldn't wait to share her idea. "David, I've had the most wonderful thought," she exclaimed, her voice full of renewed enthusiasm. She gestured excitedly towards the nearly complete miniature town model. "We should display the town at the Founders' Day Fair. Everyone would love it." David's hopeful expression immediately clouded over. He took a step back from the model, a familiar anxiety creeping into his eyes. "Oh, Susan, I don't think so," he said, his voice hesitant. "The model it's a personal project. It's not for public display, not really." His discomfort was clear. Susan's green eyes widened, and her voice held a note of hurt. "David, that's not fair," she said, stepping closer. "The town would love to see this. We worked so hard, and we should be proud of it." Her words were gentle but firm, and I felt a pang of guilt. I took a step back, unable to meet her gaze. My throat felt tight. How could I tell her that my real fear was the end of our project? I was afraid that finishing the town meant finishing our time together. I just couldn't say it aloud. Susan sighed, a soft, disappointed sound. She saw my silence as rejection. "All right, David," she said, quietly, her voice losing its warmth. "Just let me know what you decide." She turned and walked slowly towards the attic door, leaving me alone. The attic felt suddenly cold and empty without her. I looked at the miniature town model, so beautiful and silent. Every tiny detail, every painted window reminded me of our shared laughter. I had never felt so lonely before. The finished town seemed to mock my solitude. My eyes fell on the small box of miniature figures. I picked up 2 tiny figures, one with brown hair, one with auburn. Carefully, I placed them side by side in the miniature town square. It hit me then. The town wasn't just a project. It was our story, our journey together. My heart pounded with a new determination. I had to fix this. I didn't want the story to end. I quickly left the attic, closing the door behind me. I rushed out of the house, heading straight for the town library, hoping to find Susan there. I found her in the quiet library, reshelving books. "Susan," I said, my voice a little breathless. She turned, surprised. "I am so sorry," I began, looking directly into her eyes. "You were right about the fair. We should definitely show the town." She listened, her expression softening. "And Susan," I continued, my voice low and vulnerable, "my real fear was I didn't want the project to end." I took a deep breath. "Because I didn't want to lose you. I care about you more than words can say." Susan's face softened completely, a warm smile spreading across her lips. She reached out and gently touched my arm. "Oh, David," she whispered, her voice filled with relief. "I feel the same way." A wave of pure joy washed over me. Weeks later, at the bustling town fair, Susan and I stood proudly beside our miniature town model. We held hands, watching people admire our work. The town in the attic was now a town for everyone. Our project had brought us together, and now we were ready to start our real life, hand in hand.
Es momento de la trivia. Te haré 2 preguntas sobre la historia que acabas de escuchar. Piensa bien las respuestas y déjalas en los comentarios. Pregunta número 1. ¿Cuál fue el principal temor de David al negarse a exhibir la maqueta en la feria del Día del Fundador? Tómate tu tiempo para pensar. Pregunta número 2. ¿Cómo resolvieron David y Susan su desacuerdo sobre el color de la oficina de correos en la maqueta? Esas son las 2 preguntas de nuestra trivia. No olvides dejar tus respuestas en los comentarios. Me encanta leer lo que piensan sobre las historias.
Si te gustó el video, pon me gusta, suscríbete y activa la campanita para ver más historias.